You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show, and it's very good to actually be back with everybody back here on a Friday night where we belong, talking Star Wars. You know, no more flus, no more. Well, I won't say that. I'm still feeling a little bit of the effects of it, but I'm pretty much through the worst of it. So, I
must say that you look strong enough to pull the ears off
a gun dart. So, yeah, that's good. All right. Well, that's
had a little swim around your little back to tank.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's man, because I mean, it's funny too, because it's true. We haven't even had a show, much less being like live, for a couple of weeks now. It was just kind of like I'm watching, like subscribers disappear. I'm like, oh no, I got to get over this thing so we can get back. But yeah, man, I mean, we got a good one tonight. This is actually something that we talked about on our last show.
Ago.
It was the last show that we did, and I remember we were talking about, because we still Monday we will be doing our whole what's coming up in 2024, which we were supposed to do like 2 weeks ago too. But while we were talking, I remember and promoting that during the original time that we thought we were going to do the show promoting the 2024 projects, we started talking about. We just got off on a tangent, I remember, about some of the female characters, and I think you're the one that basically said, hey, maybe we should do like a top 5 female characters or something. And I'm like, yeah, let's do that in the next show. Now, I had no idea that the next show was going to be, like eons from, when we actually did it. But, there it is. Dragonfly, by the way, is joining us. He says, good evening. Good evening. Yeah, the other thing I want to point out, too, before we get into the weeds on this thing, we put a poll up because I really been thinking about, I mean, this whole, like, the way we do the show now, obviously we're doing it by necessity because we had to basically vacate the studio that we did have, and we figured, okay, well, while I'm putting together another studio, we'll just do it from different locations, and that's actually been floating us for a while. But of course, I've been really wanting to make this show even better like it used to be by having us in the same room. But the thing is, there's a couple of different ways that we could do it, and we've been playing with the idea of actually doing kind of, you see this on a lot of podcasts now, where you'll have like two, nice, almost like living room chair type things, right? Or nice, really nice, just elegant chairs, basically, with the microphones or whatever, two shot of the people. I mean, obviously you get single shots and stuff too, but it's pretty much just the two of us, not even sitting across from each other at tables like what we were doing when we did this live. But I mean, really kind of a more intimate style podcast. And to do that, though, because I still produce the show on our own, we are thankful for people who do donate money to us, who do support us. And, that does actually allow us to keep this show going. But in order to do what we really need to do, I'd almost have to hire, like, at least somebody to switch the show or whatever. So there's still some limitations. We're playing around with that. But to that end, I actually put a poll up, which surprisingly a lot of you guys actually, voted. And I'm very thankful that you guys voted because, again, we want to drive the show to what you guys want. So we'll get to the top 5 female characters in a second. Just hang on. I just want to get through this and put the results at least of this poll, because we basically said, look, do you guys want to continue seeing us do these things more live? Do you like it better when we pre-record them? Because we've actually had some people say to us, we like the pre-recorded ones because you don't have to worry about like comments interrupting your train of thought or whatever. Of course, the people that like the live version like the whole camaraderie that we have with the community, which I think does separate us from everybody else that's on YouTube. Or, maybe both, right? We just mix it up. What's funny was nobody wanted a strictly recorded show. The two choices that are actually winning out, 14% said live. They like the interaction with us in the community. A whopping 86%, though, said both. Maybe one recorded show, maybe one live show. So to that end, once we could figure out the different configuration that, we might do this whole studio thing or whatever, or even sooner, who knows? We'll probably maybe start to pre-record one of the shows and then do live on the other one. And I'll probably put up a follow-up poll, honestly, and say, okay, if we do one live, one recorded, which one do you want to be live? Which one do you want to be recorded? You want the Monday one live or the Monday one recorded, for example. So, we'll get into that. But right now, we're going to talk about our 5 female characters. And I'm really happy to say that we only doubled up twice, which I'm really happy about because, the problem is that whenever, I remember there was one time we did this where we, like virtually everyone, I think there was only one entry, that we didn't double up. So sometimes that could be interesting because, you and I will have different reasons for choosing somebody. But a lot of other times it's like, this one again, so I'm actually happy. I always like the show better when you and I pick almost completely different people. And I was actually surprised. I mean, there's a lot of different female characters, that I don't think people really realize how many female characters there are in Star Wars. Did you actually have a hard time picking? I mean, I pretty much chose mine pretty quickly, but did you find that you had a really difficult time, or was it just like, yeah, here's my 5?
Honestly, you know what? I did have a difficult time because, when you really stop and think, and, I'm just looking at even the pictures of him, like, man, I forgot about that person, or I forgot to, like, how did I forget her? And,
Yeah, I
because
know.
there's so many now over the years that you kind of forget how many actual female characters who actually surprisingly have, large roles or particularly are particularly poignant in a lot of the different storylines within Star Wars. So, yeah, it is a really difficult because in some ways I almost want to go back and redo it again
Yeah,
already,
that's
just
always
because I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that part. You know what I mean? So,
well, that
but
was my thing
I am happy, with the less I have too, though.
with
So,
your choices. Yeah. Well, I mean, look,
yeah,
we could have easily done a top 10. Honestly, this could have
yeah,
easily been a top 10, and I think it's fair to say too that these are our favorite. I mean, there might be some where people might be out there going, well, how on earth could you omit this person? Or how could you, like this person actually
hmm
had at one point the entire fate of the galaxy. How could you leave them off? This is not
right,
a critical look at, like, because we could have easily have done the top 5 most important female characters. We could have done the best. We could have been done, like the top 5 female warriors or something. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we could have framed this, but instead, we frame this with our favorites. So that means that even though some that might be like super obvious might be left off the list, and honestly, there's one in particular that I'm thinking of that if we had done a top 6, I would have added her, and I'll actually
yeah,
bring that up when we reveal our number 5s. I'll reveal what could have been number 6 for me. But yeah, so I mean, it was tough, but I think that ultimately, yeah, I think both of us actually had a pretty balanced list. All right, I think with that, it's time to reveal them, man. It's time to get into this. All right.
yeah. Let's roll them out.
All right. Well, of course, we're starting with you. And so your number 5 was Fenyx Shand, which,
hmm
I mean, look, this is a relatively new character, even though she was in the Clone Wars. But was she did she start in like season, like I'm trying to think if she started in Rebels and then they featured her in season 7 of the Clone Wars, or was she even earlier? I'm trying to remember when she made her debut.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I'm not sure exactly when she popped up. Uh, um, check that. But I think the biggest me for Fenyx Shand was just like um, she was one of the she was one of those characters that was super athletic, um, and was really good at what she did. She was pretty much like equal, in a lot of different. I think that's what made her very interesting. First, you have Aura, but Shan is like her name, like really like rang through the galaxy, much like Boba Fett, and she's proven herself on occasions, and even so much so that she even saved his life, and he felt indebted to her, and the fact that when he decided to kind of start his own criminal, or I won't say criminal, but his own empire, he really needed somebody to kind of be his enforcer, and that's who he selected because he knew her skill set. um she's a phenomenal marksman or markswoman, I guess if that's the proper term. uh but yeah, man, I just really love, and then her demeanor, like her demeanor was very cool. um Very calculating, and she's also someone that she has a heart at different occasions. When she popped up in the Clone Wars with the Bad Batch, and she was helping out, Omega. She's even um shown her compassion in that regard. She's gone up some against some pretty tough bounty hunters herself, of course, including Boba Fett and Cad Bane, like two of the more deadliest bounty hunters there are. I mean, she's held her own against both of those characters. So Fennec Shan definitely gets my respect, and she's a pretty cool character.
Well, the only correction that I would make, I mean, yeah, she does show compassion throughout, most of her stuff. But as it relates to Omega, don't forget, she was hired by the Kaminoans. So it wasn't like, she was trying to save Omega out of the goodness of her heart or something. I mean, she was
Well,
another
yeah,
she was another bounty like anything else. I mean, it was a job. So,
that's that is true.
that's the only slight correction
I
I would
did
make.
forget about that element.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It wasn't like some sort of a mercy mission. But she definitely, yeah. I mean, she's one of the probably more interesting characters, I think, because she has more dimensions than just, like what you've seen from people like, say, Aura Singh or something like that. I mean, there's definitely more going on, and especially in the Book of Boba Fett when she's helping Boba pretty much build this empire or organization or whatever it is. So, 100% yes, I could see. She's another one, man. She could have probably been like my number 7 or something. But again, we had to limit it to 5. So she ended up being your number 5. For me, she probably would have floated a little bit further down the list. But, that's the fun of doing this. All right, so my number 5 is Ahsoka. And it's funny because, in a lot of cases, I think people would assume that maybe she would make it a little bit higher on the list. And certainly, I mean, I almost could have put her very high on the list simply because this is a character that I started out hating. Like, I hated her when she was first introduced in the Clone Wars, man. I mean, I was just like, I had really almost violent feelings, actually, towards her, where I thought, oh, man, this chick, she was like second only to Jar Jar Binks to me. That's how much she grated on my nerves.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Well, what was funny, though, was that over time, she's become one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. I mean, to take somebody from being like a super hated character to being somebody that's like one of my favorites, I mean, you would think that I would rank her a little bit higher on the list. The only reason why I didn't is because, you'll see as I reveal numbers 4 through 1, I think that these other characters just are better, as far as being my favorites. But Ahsoka's constantly one of my favorites. I mean, in spite of the fact that the Ahsoka series was a little bit less than stellar, it's just like, well,
yeah.
it still didn't really do much to temper my love of the character. It's, you could just recognize, look, okay, this is just bad writing. This is, this has nothing to do with the character. The character's still actually very cool. So I look forward to what, we see from Ahsoka in the future. But, we'll have to see. All right. So now we're about to go to number 4. This actually could move kind of quickly. Your number 4 is Cara Dune. This is another one. Spoiler alert, she's not on my list, but this is another one that she could have, because this is another one of those original characters that was freshly written and is actually interesting. So she's your number 4, so why'd you pick her?
I really love the character because Cara Dune, once again, it's supposed to, she serves as a perfect complement to Din. And in fact, I thought there was going to be like a little bit of a romantic thing going on between the two. In some ways, I'm kind of glad they didn't go that way, but in some aspects, I kind of wanted to see what that would look like. But her backstory is very interesting. Like being a former paratrooper, she's from Alderaan, played by Gina Carano, which to me really brought a lot of life to the character, and it's unfortunate, in real life that she had to step away from the character due to some comments she made on social media. But the character of Cara Dune, I think, is really cool because she shows a certain level of leadership and strength that here too we really haven't seen on the I guess on the hero side of things. I didn't want to say rebellion, but on the hero side of things. And I guess you could kind of compare her in some way, in a lot of ways, to Leia, but it's her physical prowess though. It's like she's a butt kicker, man. Like she's not afraid, and she's she just goes at it. And I really love that. It's kind of, she kind of gave me this whole Lara Croft Tomb Raider kind of vibe.
Oh, that's a good one.
She also kind of reminds me of uh Sigourney Weaver from Alien. What's her character?
Oh, Ripley.
Ripley. Thank you. That she also gives me that that vibe too. So, and I really, and that's what I really got from Cara Dune, and I thought that was really cool to see that in the Star Wars universe.
Well, and here's another thing too, and this, I'm glad that we're bringing Cara Dune up. I'm glad you put her in the list, actually, for no other reason, because this is a good time to clarify some of the comments that we made previously, because every time, you start to criticize the way that Lucasfilm has put these female characters in the forefront, and then of course everybody goes, oh, you're just a misogynist, you don't like, strong female characters and all this. That's a bunch of crap. What it is that we don't like pseudo males, right? Because that's the problem, is that in a lot of ways across the franchise, and actually this is happening in a lot of movies, but you see this in Marvel, you see this in, and I can almost let it go in Marvel because you do have the superhero element to this, even though it's kind of obvious in some ways. But they basically make these female characters they're not really like female. They're kind of like she-males or something. You know what I mean? It's like they're like male stand-ins or something. Whereas somebody like Cara Dune is the perfect example of a well-written, strong female character who still is female. It's like all the strengths and everything that women naturally have, she has, but she's also a strong character physically as well, but not to the point to where she's like a pseudo male. I mean, she still retains those characteristics, and you have that, in a lot of other characters. Like we had always, of course, pointed out to Leia, we point to Ahsoka, we point to Padme, we point to all these people who are very much strong, like just, I mean, the characters are just like really well written, but they still retain that. There's still that difference, right? You don't have these overly emasculated men and these like pseudo male women. You earlier in the franchise, and when things are actually well written, you have men and women who are written well, who basically exhibit the strengths of both sexes and just make for some really compelling films or television. And so Cara Dune is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, she doesn't lack um she doesn't overpower Din, but she's not like, oh, the damsel in distress. She's very much
Mm-hmm.
strong and can hold her own, and and like I said, she's a butt kicker in her own right. Um, she ended up having a leadership role as becoming a marshal. So I mean, I think that she was used perfectly to
Exactly.
really encapsulate all those things you just said. So yeah, definitely Cara Dune was one of my favorites, and I really hope we find a way to bring her back.
That would be nice. That would be my hope too. And actually, that's a good segue because everything that we were talking about Cara Dune could certainly apply to my number 4. And my number 4 is actually Dr. Afra. This is a character that I just absolutely love. She reminds me of a lot of there's a couple of different ways that sometimes they'll write like really strong, really spunky female characters, right? Like Cara Dune is one way. Afra's another one. Afra's got she kind of has that aloof, almost Lois Lane kind of vibe in some ways. They
Mm.
write the character Lois Lane in a way very similar to where Afra is incredibly smart. She's always able to outsmart pretty much everybody that she faces, male or female. I mean, now it's not even a gender thing. Um,
Mm.
but she's another very well written character, and she's also somebody different. This is something that I really appreciated because it's very rare, especially in the Disney era, where we get something different from Star Wars. It's not like, oh, here's the new Leia or here's the new, whatever, right? I mean, this time they actually created somebody who's completely different. Dr. Afra is kind of like the Indiana Jones of the universe in a way. She's
Hmm.
kind of like an archaeologist, but she's not she's kind of a good guy, I suppose, but kind of not, she's sort of out for her own thing and
Yeah, she's kind of reminds me of Benicio del Toro's character, DJ,
yeah, there's some similarities there with
where
the whole
she's
like
kind of
gray
more like,
area.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, without question. And I mean, she goes like toe to toe with Vader. She's, there's like
Hmm.
almost nobody that intimidates her. And if you actually follow the comic series, man, I mean, there's some really cool stories there. She runs into Han Solo's dad at one point. I mean, there's just like a lot of really interesting things. In fact, um, I think Chrysanthemum was actually introduced with her because she had worked with him or something like that. I mean, he was sort of around, but he basically came to prominence through working with her, and you find out like Jabba the Hutt was working. I mean, the whole Dr. Afra comic series it's amazing, and if you haven't had a chance to read it, I would highly suggest it because this is a character I would like to see more of. I would love to see her appear in a Disney Plus show or a film. Even an animated series would be nice. I mean, anything. I just,
Where, if she were to pop up, where do you think you would see her? Like,
well,
is there a show that's already established where it would be reasonable to find her, or would she have to be in something completely different?
I don't think that her fate was sealed before the original franchise, the original trilogy was over. So, I mean, she could technically pop up. I mean, she'd be older, obviously, but, she could
Hmm.
pop up without question. in the whole Mandoverse. That's the thing. I mean, if they went back and they wanted to explore a little bit between episodes 3 and 4, like they wanted to pop her up in the Bad Batch or something, they could do that, or anything else that takes place during that. I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot that they could do. I mean, she's mostly lived in the comic book universe, but she could easily slot in on a variety of the shows, or even in a book. I would like to see a full novel of her. I'm not aware of any novels that have been written that feature her, but I think it would be something worth exploring, no pun intended. All right. Number 3. We're going to go for our number 3s. All right. Your number 3 is Assage Ventress. This is another one. Another really well-written character.
Yeah, I love Assage. I mean, I think she's once again another great formidable character for our heroes. In particular, Anakin. I think. I mean, even though she's gone up against Obi-Wan on her own, I think she's more of a foil for Anakin because I think their styles and everything are more similar. I think they can relate to each other in some ways a little bit more. And I think that the arrogance that they kind of possess are more in line with each other. So I think they're more of a compatible enemies, if that makes sense. But then I also love her progression. Watching her, we first come into contact with her in the Clone Wars, the animated movie, which is essentially what the first 2 episodes of the Clone Wars before it was released. And, she's very skilled in the dark, very trained by Dooku, a beast with lightsabers. I mean, she's pretty good. She has an assassin's background, and then coupled with that being trained by a master Jedi who's also become a Sith Lord, I think that just added to her development. And to even see her towards the end when she kind of got disowned from Dooku and she kind of went rogue on her own, and she kind of started doing her own thing, becoming more of a mercenary as opposed to joining the the Republic. I thought that was a nice twist for that character, and to see that she kind of once again we kind of see her have a little bit more of a heart now for certain things. So I really really love her character. I love the conflict that she had with Dooku. Um, I love how she kind of uh, just evolved, like I said, just as a character, because I didn't see that coming from Assage Ventress.
No.
I didn't see her,
No, not at all.
making that switch. And so I thought that was great writing because, like I said, we didn't see it coming. And because she is so deadly and she's so skilled, it would have been cool to see if she would have actually tried to go good and actually be on the side of the Republic. And if the Republic was like, wait a minute, her,
See, that's the thing. I mean, they missed the opportunity with Vader. They missed it again with Kylo. They missed it again with Assage. Because you have all these different redemption. You're right. With Assage, you don't sit there and think like, oh, geez, another redemption arc. I mean, her redemption arc was actually compelling. It made sense, and it was something that you were on board with right from the beginning. But like you said, we have yet to see somebody turn back to the light and then actually try to join it to where everybody's like, wait, hold the time out. This person was like just wrecking shop across the universe, and now we're going to trust this person. I mean, what a great dynamic that would be, and something that would be inventive in Star Wars. I really wish that they would redeem somebody and not either instantly have them killed or, go off somewhere,
What would have been really cool for Assage, I think she would have been one of the perfect or a prime candidate for this, even more so than some of the characters you already named, is the fact that she's not a figurehead.
Well, yes.
So with Vader,
right.
You see what I'm saying? Like Vader
Yeah,
is like,
no,
okay,
that's true.
he's Vader.
Right.
Dooku, of course, figurehead of the Separatist Party. Kylo, new order, first order, right? But Assage is more. It's almost like if they did it somewhere like uh, Shiati, um, Balin's apprentice,
Oh,
like
yeah, Shin. Yeah, I guess it is
I think
Shin
it's
Hati.
I think
Yeah, Shin
yeah,
Hati.
Shanati, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think if you just like that's kind of how Assage
that's
Ventress
true.
is in a way.
She's kind of like the new Assage Ventress, without
Yeah,
question. Although here's something
and
interesting. I don't know if you clued in on this. Now, I didn't watch it, but I had heard that they dropped the trailer for season 3 of The Bad Batch, and in
mm,
it, Assage makes an appearance.
mm,
Like they're bringing her
nice.
back. I don't know how they're bringing her back, because if I remember correctly, they killed her off at the end of
Yeah,
Dark Disciple, which, again, it's like, if
yeah,
you're
phenomenal book.
yeah, if you're an Assage Ventress fan, I mean, that is like a must-read novel. And the beautiful part
Yeah.
about Dark Disciple, because it was pretty much like rehashed from an old unmade Clone Wars episode, the book's not that long. I mean, it's actually a pretty easy, quick read. It's not one of those like, oh man, I gotta try to find time to read this book or something. I mean, it's a book that anybody could get through pretty quickly. And honestly, the reward, it's really one of those books, and I don't say this as much as I love all the Star Wars novels, I don't say this about very many of them, but the reward of actually reading this is immense.
Mm-hmm.
Especially,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, especially if you're an Assage Ventress fan. I would say this anyway, but I mean, if you're in any way a Ventress fan, because the interesting thing about her is that her story almost mirrors Ahsoka in a way, you know.
Yeah, that's a valid point too. Yep.
I mean, it's very close to, like, it's almost like that flip side of the Ahsoka storyline. So there's an interesting pattern there. All right, my number three. My number three is it's like another female character that has just become like I've become an insane fan of, particularly with the comic books that have been coming out, and that's Kira. Man, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I cannot get enough of this character, honestly, especially in the comic books. Like I said, she actually duels Vader. I mean, it's like she basically resurrects oh man, I keep wanting to say Black Crimson Dawn. She pretty
Mm-hmm.
much brings Crimson Dawn back and starts to lead it and starts to cause all kinds of trouble, and then she actually kidnaps the carbonite frozen Han Solo and tries to auction it
Mm-hmm.
off, and then the Empire's like freaking out because it's like, well, wait a minute, it's like, well, now we're gonna have to get it back, and of course Boba Fett had it, and
Right.
he wants to get it back for Jabba, and I mean, I just cannot
Yeah.
express how insanely good that whole like Crimson Reign, Crimson Dawn, War of the Bounty Hunter, like that whole series, and that just like that's a really Kira heavy series, by the way. And then of course, her introduction in Solo, a Star Wars story, just phenomenal. I really want to see more of this character.
Yeah, I mean, isn't she's easy on the eyes
Well,
as
that's
well, so that wouldn't be
that
yeah.
doesn't hurt. Maybe
So
maybe
yeah,
maybe we could get Kira in a like metal bikini in some point.
white pants.
Yeah,
That's your other favorite.
some white pants, or whatever. I'll take
But
pretty much anything.
yeah, I mean, I think she was a phenomenal character with the especially this she was introduced in Solo. Once again, strong character, and you saw vulnerability, but then you also saw her cunningness. I think that's one of the
Mhm.
things about Kira that you really get to see is how cunning she is, and when she went up against was it Drayton Voss?
Yep.
It was just like, okay, wow, I didn't see that switch coming, and then you find out that Maul kind of had her in his back pocket. I'm just like, wow,
Yeah, there's just like a lot there,
that was
and
great writing, yeah.
well, another really cool aspect of it that I kind of forgot to touch on, honestly, but it's interesting that she's Solo's original love interest too.
Exactly.
And so you have
Yeah.
that whole dynamic going, you know? And I mean, there's just
Hmm.
like there's a lot of depth there, and that you don't really see that in a lot of Star Wars characters lately, you know? And so to have like these female characters that are actually written this well. And again, this is why whenever Kathleen Kennedy and all these like woke people start whining about, not enough female representation in Star Wars, and that's why they have to make overpowered characters like Rey and all this other stuff. It's like you guys just aren't paying attention to your own franchise. Look at all these people that you and I have had in our top 5 thus far. We're only on number 3, but each of us
Hmm.
have now introduced 3 characters each, right? So 6 characters.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, we haven't overlapped yet. So, yeah. I mean,
Nope.
look at what you have here. You had this like rich treasure trove of characters, much less female characters that are just well written, spot on in the franchise. I mean, it's amazing. So,
Hmm.
here's another one. She's just like just so much depth and just so many things that you could do. And they are doing. I mean, to their credit, franchise wide, maybe we haven't seen her in any movies or anything like that lately, but they are at least putting her into the comic books and, really starting to feature her heavy. So that part's cool. Okay. So I guess we're on your number 2 now.
My number 2.
Your number 2. So your number 2 is Ahsoka. So this is one that
Yeah.
we actually doubled
Kind of
up
covered.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, and from a different space, I just love the growth of Ahsoka. Her arc, and this is one of the things I loved about this character. And I think this is probably we didn't cover it when you brought her up, but this is one of those characters that we've seen legitimately go from a child to an adult. uh, Um, Much like Anakin, we only saw that really once with Anakin,
Yeah, it's true.
because
You
Anakin
don't
started off
see
as a
that.
kid,
It's very
a
rare
little
that you
kid.
see somebody, yeah, that's been, you see like kind of their beginning and then going through their
Yeah,
stages.
because
And I
even when
think that
got
that's
Luke,
part of the
Luke was
reason.
already old enough,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, he was almost like 20 basically. So you're right
Right.
about that. And I mean, technically they're trying to retrofit that a little bit with Obi-Wan and seeing a little Luke or whatever. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean,
Hmm.
let's face it. And to that effect, I mean, you know, I think that's probably why I went from hating her to loving her myself, is the fact that you did see a lot of growth. It wasn't
Yeah.
R2E and Sky Guy and all this for, like
Yeah.
7 seasons of the Clone Wars. I mean, there was
Yeah.
definite growth
She
there.
grew up. Yeah, she grew up, and then some of the challenges that she had to face. And one thing I loved about watching her development as a character that helped her get to the point that you were just referencing is that they left her alone to lead certain things.
Hmm.
And Anakin would kind of give her like, "Hey, just remember this." And then when she would go off, like when she and was it Barris Offee's Padawan, they were kind of teamed up, and they got caught in that whole little mining thing, and they
Oh,
had to
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
work
yeah, yeah.
together. You know what
Yep.
I'm saying? Like, and then, or
Hmm.
when she would have to lead clone troopers and she would lose some, and she felt the weight of the responsibility of being a commander, and she didn't have Obi-Wan or Anakin to fall back on. It was on her. And she had to, figure out a way to overcome that. When she got possessed by that one freakish little spirit that they were dealing with on, when they were dealing with
Mordor.
Mordor. Yeah. That was really cool. And then of course the whole bombing when she had to stand on trial and her eventual leaving the Jedi Order and kind of going off on her own. And and of course we saw her then pop up in Rebels, where she's now training not only just Ezra, but she's also keeping and training Kanan a little bit too. So we've seen her evolution, and now of course in her series, unfortunately, it didn't pay off as well as we would have liked, at least in the first season. However, we've definitely seen a lot of growth in her go through the dips and valleys and highs and lows of becoming a Jedi and figuring out who she really is as a character. And she's one of the more fleshed out characters, quite honestly, out of the whole franchise,
Hmm.
because we've had a chance to go through the motions with her, as she's kind of matriculated through her journey. So, yeah, and she's become super powerful. That's the other
Well,
thing too.
that's it.
Like she's
Yeah.
actually more powerful than most people really
Yes. Yes.
take for granted.
I was
So
actually gonna say that. I was gonna say that, you go from like, oh man, this kid, I can't stand, get this person off the screen to, oh man, Ahsoka's here now. It's really gonna, I mean, she
yeah,
pretty
exactly.
much is
Like,
like she's advanced to now you say her in the same breath as like a Luke Skywalker, or Anakin, or somebody like that.
yeah,
She's not
absolutely.
she's not like one of these like lower tier Jedi or something. You're kind of like, all right, it's Ahsoka now. Some stuff's gonna happen. I mean, and that's again, and I think that is pretty much a testament to what you were talking about. It's basically that growth. It was believable. It was organic. It was slow, really
Hmm.
slow, because we had like 7 seasons of Clone Wars or whatever to deal with. But
And it
the
wasn't forced,
payoff,
like you said. Yeah,
yeah, right. And even
or as
in
Vader would
spite of
say,
the
she earned
problems,
it.
well, that's it. She earned it, and in spite of the problems with the series, you know, and it's funny too because you had this whole like, okay, she was always the immature one. I mean, let's face it, the reason why she was brought there brilliantly was because
Hmm.
Yoda was like, I know how to curb Anakin and teach him a little bit. I'm gonna give him somebody like him, and now he's
Yep.
got to deal with the perils of being a teacher and like, oh, well, this is why everybody yells at me when I do this, because now he's yelling at her, right? But what's cool
Yep.
about it though is when you fast forward to a little bit of the Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett primarily. It's one of the few things about the Book of Boba Fett that was actually kind of nice was the fact that now you get to see Ahsoka interacting with Luke. It's like,
Hmm.
here's your
Yeah.
master's kid, and now you're kind of acting as a guide to him, the same way his
Hmm.
father acted as a guide to you. So,
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah. That.
that was a nice.
Oh yeah. That was a nice, almost like a kind of full circle type situation with that character. One of my favorite episodes, honestly, with Ahsoka was when Anakin basically said like, "Hey, look, there may come a time where I'm not going to be around, and you're going to need to know how to defend yourself
Yeah.
against these multiple black." And so he basically just kept. He got all like the best clone troopers, and he's just like, "Okay, fire on her."
Yeah, I know that was
And
awesome.
she had to try to, and it was just like that was her test. And and she was just like, man, until she finally got it. And then lo and behold, when Order 66 happened, that's when she actually needed it the most. And she
Hmm.
reflected on that. And man, I was just, to me, that was just one of the greatest piece of writing that they did on the Clone Wars.
Well, I mean, and again, this is one of those things that a lot of these things are not possible as far as their effectiveness without seeing all this growth, right? This is the benefit of
Hmm.
actually showing all this is that when you get to
Yep.
a moment like that, there's more poignancy to it. It actually carries more weight. And then further down, when she's eventually training like Kanan and Ezra, and then eventually, of course, Luke, it's like, okay, you go from seeing her as kind of like the reckless Padawan to now like kind of an elder statesman. She's
Hmm.
like the veteran Jedi now. And she's passing on all this stuff, and all these people are like, they don't like Din doesn't know what to do with Grogu and all that, and she comes in, and you're kind of like, okay, cool, Ahsoka's there now. Now this kid actually stands a chance, right, to learn about his heritage. So it's just so mind blowing to me the way that they were able to spin that. But again, it's really not that surprising when you think of the fact that we've just been with this character since 2005.
Hmm.
And it's like,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's almost 20 years now, man. This is like we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of the premiere of the Clone Wars movie. You know,
Wow.
I know. I
That's
didn't even
crazy.
think that. Just like that just occurred to me
This
this second.
occurred
I'm
to
like,
you.
ooh, ouch. All right, we're gonna stay away from that. All right. Well, my number two,
Yes.
which I mean, this could have been my number one, honestly, but my number two is Mara Jade. Mara Jade is somebody that
Mm,
I just, again,
good.
you can't ignore the expanded universe just because it's Legends now. For one thing, there's a big case that they should really be mining this even more than they are. And they're still mining it. I mean, look, they brought Thrawn in, they brought all these people in. all these expanded universe concepts. Even Coruscant itself is an expanded universe name. So the expanded universe, which is now Legends, has basically been more or less peppered throughout the franchise, even since Lucas had control of it. But Mara Jade is somebody that I have always contended you could still bring back into the fold, even with the current, But the thing that I liked about this character, when you just think about like the Legends version, which of course is all we have right now. But I mean, when you think of her story there, she was what was called the Emperor's Hand. She was kind of like an assassin. She was trained in the Force by the Emperor, trained in lightsaber combat by the Emperor, and she was sort of
Ventress, right?
Well, no, because see, Assage was more like she would be more comparable to like a Sith acolyte. Whereas Mara Jade with the Emperor's Hand, that was sort of like you had your royal guard and then you had these group of like Force assassins, that are kind of like acolytes mixed with, inquisitors, mixed with, they're just like insanely good at combat. And that was the problem, was that, she found out that Luke Skywalker was the one that wiped out Vader and the Emperor. And she's just like, yep, I'm getting revenge. I'm going to kill the guy that killed the Emperor. And so Skywalker was her target quite some time. Now, of course, what was interesting, because this is another thing that developed over a long series of novels, but essentially what happened was they started to respect each other. Then, she sort of dropped the whole revenge thing and then started working with the rebellion, or, well, actually the New Republic. Then she eventually fell in love with Luke. Then she married Luke. Then she had kids with Luke. So, there was quite a bit of a story arc here. And her character was just so insanely good. I mean, if you guys haven't, you should really revisit some of the novels that actually feature her. Of course, the whole Thrawn trilogy, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising and Last Command. Those books were pretty much like the birth of Mara Jade, right? I mean, that's where her character's introduced in the main story arc. But if you read through even more of the stuff, even through the Yuuzhan Vong stuff, I mean, her character was just insanely good, and easily one of the best written female characters, and probably one of the more interesting ones, because that's where I was coming from too. Is I wanted to choose, like Dr. Afra, like Kira, like, and Mara Jade. I mean, these are some of the more, they don't necessarily roll off the top of the the tip of your tongue necessarily, but they're by far the most interesting of the female characters, and I think that that's part of the reason why they're my favorites. Like I was gonna say, I mean, this is not giving it away because she doesn't appear on the list, but I would have put Padme as my number 6. Because,
okay, that's the one you were talking about. Okay.
Yeah, that was the one I was talking about. Because Padme,
okay.
I mean, she's pretty important. But beyond the importance of the character,
the mother of the future of the rebellion.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you're just like, oh, I mean, she does have a place in the universe. But the thing is, she's also a really well-written, very cool character, and I mean, she's somebody that is another one. I could easily put her as a number 6. And honestly, she could have ranked even higher on the list, but again, it's like if you take into consideration all these other people I've had on the list, they're just more interesting characters to me. I mean, yes, is Padme more important than, Dr. Afra? Of course. I don't think anybody's going to debate that. I mean, maybe somebody, but most people are going to be like, yeah, I mean, we understand that. But again, sometimes the most important characters are not necessarily the best written or the most interesting. And so for me, that's just why my list looks the way it does.
Oh yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, and like you said, Mara Jade is one of those characters that you really almost want to see. You really want to see come to the live screen. Um,
Yeah.
I think that will be especially if they do like since we're in this whole Mandoverse and we're dealing with the fall of the Empire and things of that nature. This would be if they do decide to do a Luke storyline with like Sebastian Stan or something like that. That would be awesome, to bring Mara Jade into it because I think that would add a dynamic that people have never really seen, especially if you haven't read those books. Now, like, oh, Luke Skywalker, had a person who was trying to kill him, and now she falls in love. I mean, that's great writing right there. So,
Well, you could do that because there's like 30 years between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens.
right,
So you could still write that entire storyline without necessarily ruining the integrity of Grumpy Luke.
right. And Mary J was super powerful. That's the other thing
Oh
too. I mean,
yeah.
in order to be that, in order to be the Emperor's hand, you have to be, supremely powerful. So it's not like, and that's something I don't think a lot of people, I mean, outside of now Ray that we've seen, but at least we can see now why Mary Jade is that way because she was trained by the Emperor. So there's context for why she's
Yeah.
that powerful,
Mara
as
Jade
opposed
is
to
what they wanted Rey to be because, Mara Jade is how you write a super powerful female character without making it ridiculous. And by
right.
the way, when you really stack the two up, Mara Jade would just wipe the floor with Rey. I mean, as powerful as Rey has become, even now, she's still not as good of a lightsaber combatant. She still doesn't,
Right.
she's not really a master of the Force yet. I mean, granted, with this new film that they're coming out, sure, it's 15 years in the future. You can then start to believe, okay, maybe now I could buy the fact that Rey has the power that she does.
Yeah.
But just, her whole thing. Like, Mara Jade would just completely decimate her in seconds. There wouldn't even be any kind of a contest. And
Right.
I can gleefully say that because I love that character so much. And I mean,
Hmm.
I don't hate the Rey character. I mean, a lot of times I think it comes off that way, but I don't really hate it. Or I think she's poorly written, but that's not, the character's fault,
Yeah.
really. It's
Exactly.
just, and again, I mean, Rey could have, I don't know. I don't even know if Rey really would have made my top 10, to be honest. I don't think she's that interesting of a character. And she just, like, I think the
Yeah,
idea of Rey is better than the reality of Rey.
I
That's,
completely agree with that.
well, and this, of course, moves into your number one, because your number one, of course, is like the OG, right?
I
Princess
was about
Leia.
to say that was my actual phrase, like literally my actual phrase.
Well,
Yes,
I mean, look,
yeah,
you gotta tip your hat
you
to her
gotta.
because
I
when
mean, yeah, I
when
mean,
George wrote her, there wasn't really any female character like that. And this is a female character that has served as a role model since
not yeah,
1977.
yeah, because not only that, like I said, I feel like without Princess Leia, you don't have Ripley, you don't have Sarah Connor, you don't have
100%.
some of these other characters that are strong female led, you know, um, and there's a lot of people we've seen throughout the years who've played characters. Jamie Lee Curtis has played some phenomenal, you know, uh, female strong led. I mean, a strong female lead, and Carrie Fisher, man. I mean, like she really brought it as Princess Leia, and it was almost effortless. Like it's just the wittiness, her charm, her um her fearlessness, like this, the whole package that you want in when people think of a strong female character, like it's quintessentially Princess Leia, and
100%.
it's almost like there's almost no flaw in that, and that's what's truly beautiful about what George Lucas did when he created Princess Leia. And most people think when you hear the term princess, you think of the traditional damsel in distress, and she was a more or less a damsel in distress, but she didn't come off, she didn't appear that way because
Well, that was the
her
thing. I
character
mean,
was not your traditional
well,
princess.
that's it, right? She's in the tower, waiting for Prince
Yeah,
Charming to rescue her. What's funny is as soon as the door opens, she's just like, "Oh, aren't you short for?" I mean, she's all snarky and like,
yeah,
"Really,
exactly.
you're the guy they sent
You're the
to rescue
guy,
me?
right?
Like you're the best we got, really?" And I mean, and
Yeah,
again,
and
it,
and then even the second dashing guy, being an older, more dashing gentleman, and the more smug rogue, Han Solo. She's like, "All right, into the fly shoot, fly boy." He's just like, "Who is this chick?" And
she's all
I,
like bagging on the
I
plane. You mean you didn't even have a plan for getting out? I mean, she's just complaining the entire time. It was great.
yeah,
She just
you
wasn't.
came here in this. You're
Yeah.
braver than I thought. I mean, geez. I mean, Leia was laying it out for her, man. I mean,
Well, and the
but
thing that's funny, and she honestly, I think she probably would have been my number 6, Padme number 7. Because again, you know, I mean, I love the Leia character. I mean, the fact that she's, spoiler, alert, she's not my number 1, but
mhm,
she could have easily have been on any of these. It's just that I think in a lot of ways, for me, it was like she is kind of the obvious choice. And again, I'm going for more
mhm.
interesting. As cool of a character as she is, I just don't think she's as interesting as the people that I have chosen. But as far as well-written characters, importance, I mean, she's like probably the quintessential
Gold standard. Yeah.
female, Star Wars character easily. And I mean, she's one of the few. Because again, usually when you're a little kid, if you're a little boy, you gravitate towards the male characters. If you're a little girl, you gravitate towards the female characters. You're just kind of naturally at that age looking for role models and stuff. But
Mhm.
I was actually following like Leia's story. I mean, even when it came to, and I'm only like 21 years old here, when it came to like Heir to the Empire, the Timothy Zahn novel and all that stuff, I was following that stuff. Some of the more Leia-centric things. Like one of the Legends books that's incredible. I mean, when you read the back, it almost like reads like one of those like romance novel type things, but it's not.
Mhm.
It's The Courtship of Princess Leia. That's like a
Oh yeah.
brilliant. That's another book that I would tell people, man. You know, I know I know how it sounds. This is kind of like the Star Wars version of 50 Shades of Grey or something where, it would only
Twilight.
appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah, like like a 15-year-old girl would pretty much be interested in this, but I promise you that if you pick up The Courtship of Princess Leia even now and read it, you will not be disappointed. So I mean, there's like a lot of Leia-centric stories that I always enjoy too.
Yeah. Well, who do you have for your number
All
1?
right, so my number 1, this is another one where we did actually double up. My number 1 is Assage Ventress.
Mm.
Because again, look, I brought up Dark Disciple. I brought up some of this other stuff. Her character is one of the few characters that was interesting both when she was completely dark side and evil, but then when she turned, it was even, like Kylo's kind of like that too. And that to me is always fascinating because you would think that while she was a student at Dooku and all that stuff, that she'd be one-dimensional, but she wasn't. There was actually a lot going on with her character, and I think that if she really is in the Bad Batch Season 3, that, look, we're going to be in for a wild ride here because this is another one of those characters that I mentioned when you brought her up that, she was kind of the flip side story of Ahsoka. Because both Ahsoka and Assage had a very similar thing. They were both disillusioned by their respective orders, I guess you could put it.
Mhm.
Even to a degree by their masters. And
Yep.
they both more or less left their respective lives behind. And they didn't necessarily join up with the quote unquote good guys, neither one of them. They more or less
Mhm.
stayed sort of on the fringes and on the outside. And in fact, in that story, they were pretty much intertwined. I don't know how much people remember, but Assage actually saves Ahsoka and actually helps her quite a bit. when a lot of that happens. So there's just
Yeah.
like a lot that you can really get into with her story, because even that, what was it called? Jedi Lost, the one that sort of read like a script because it was a script, the one with
Hmm.
Dooku.
Yeah.
Assage features really heavily in that because she's the one that
Hmm.
basically finds like, his journal or something, and we learn a lot about not just Dooku and his past and all that, but we actually learn a lot about Assage too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. She's like I said earlier. She's truly has a compelling story. Like, and on both sides of the spectrum, being on like the dark end as well as coming to more of a neutral position, if you will. Um, so I really, and I would really love to see more from her. So she is in the Bad Batch. I'm really curious as to what they're going to do with that particular character
Well,
and
and
how
I
that's
think
going
that
to.
this still is actually from that, because
Mm,
I always, whenever you and I double up on any of these lists, I always try to at least find different pictures, of the
right.
people, and this one kept coming up quite a bit. So I'm really curious. There's another one actually where she actually has hair that I think is
That's
from the.
creepy.
Yeah, it's very weird. Like I said, I should probably actually go and watch and see if the trailer's legit and if it's out, whatever.
Yeah.
Because of Bad Batch season 3, I mean, obviously we'll get more into this on our Monday show where we're talking about upcoming projects for 24, but I think that Bad Batch is coming out relatively earlier this year than later, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken. I'm not 100% sure. I still had to finish watching the rest of season 2, to be
Oh,
honest,
last one. Yeah.
because I still threaten that, you and I, even if we don't make it like officially part of the show, that we'll just blow through reviews of the rest, because we stopped our reviews at like, I don't know, episode 8 or 9 or something. So we can actually, just pre-record and then just spit out the rest of the reviews. So at least that's complete. But yeah, I mean, I really hope Assage is in that. I mean, I think that would be just phenomenal, you know.
Well, there we have it.
Well,
That's
that's it.
all
Yeah, that's pretty much our list, Chats
our
have actually
list,
been
man.
strangely quiet today. I guess everybody's just been paying attention to our list, which, we appreciate. But the question is, and you still have a little bit of time to chat in, but we want to know from you guys, what are your top 5 favorite female characters? Let us know in the comment section. Let us know on Discord. Let us know on Facebook. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can interact with us, get a hold of us. Of course, our Twitter/X page, Instagram, maybe throw up a photo of your absolute favorite, but let us know your top 5 favorite characters. We'd really be interested in knowing. You guys heard what we had to say. Now we want to know what you have to say. And of course, as always, if you guys are enjoying this content, you want to see more of it, make sure you like the video so that way it tells the algorithm, hey, show me more of this stuff. And hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Hopefully our schedule is going to stay pretty stable. And, like I said, maybe I'm going to put up a follow-up poll about when you guys might want to see us live versus pre-recorded. So with that, make sure you guys watch us Monday night at 8, because we are going to be going over the projects that are supposedly coming out this year, 2024. So we're going to let you guys know, at least as far as we know, what Star Wars projects you can expect to see this year, and maybe what projects might be held off for the subsequent years. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.